Hey guys, this is Ron. Doing a quick video on GNS3. I've covered a lot about packet tracer. We've even done a couple labs on real equipment, but packet tracer I haven't talked about, or GNS3 I haven't talked about that all that much. So it's another simulator, kind of like packet tracer, but much more flexible. You can do a lot of things with it that you can't do with packet tracer. Although I will say configuration-wise, it can get kind of tricky and it can be a little bit frustrating at times. I've had my fair share of problems with it, and I'm a very basic user. But I'll talk about a couple things that has helped me along the way. So GNS3, you're going to want to go ahead and go to the website GNS3.net. You're going to go to the download tab. First thing for me, I'm a Windows user, so I did the all-in-one installer. It comes with Dynamips, Kimu Pimu, I hope that's how you specify or say it, PuTTY, VPCS, WinPCAP, Wireshark. Now, some of you might not need all these things. I didn't need all these things. I already had Wireshark installed, which means I already had WinPCAP. I already had PuTTY installed, but obviously Dynamips, Kimu, just to make sure I had everything there, I downloaded it as an all-in-one, right? Anyway, you got it for Mac OS, and then you can get it for Linux as well. I will say I've got Linux Mint running on my netbook for when I travel, and I do have GNS3 on that, and I think it came as a part of a Debian package, so it was a pretty easy install. Now, I will tell you, it runs extremely slow on my netbook, but hey, that's a netbook for you. Anyway, so you're going to want to go ahead and download it, install it, and go from there. Anyway, documentation tab's got a lot of good things that you can read to figure out how to configure certain things, because there is a lot to do in GNS3. We're just going to go over some of the basics here. One of the other things that you're going to want to do once you get GNS3 is these appliances. So GNS3.net/appliances. To run some of your host computers, you've got a couple different options. You've got these Kimu appliances. You've got VirtualBox appliances. Or you can go as far as GNS Workbench. GNS Workbench runs under VMware and possibly VirtualBox. And it is a full-on installation of Ubuntu with GNS already installed, already set up. You're just going to have to bring in your own iOSs. Okay? Did I mention that? You have to have your own Cisco iOSs. Okay? Which is cool because then you actually get the full-on iOS, not some tamed-down version that they put into Packet Tracer. Anyway, so you may or may not want to do both. Or all of these. I didn't do Workbench. I have seen it run before. Pretty cool. But I do have this installed, and I do have this installed. Just playing around. Anyway, there's a third one that you're possibly going to want, and that's this virtual PC. Here's a website that you can go to. Basically, click on the link. You're going to go to SourceForge. Number 4, I went beta. You're going to want 2 files. The only really file that you really need is this this file right here. If you did the full-on install of GNS3, the all-in-one, you're going to have this VPCS, just maybe not this new of a version, but you're going to want this DLL file. Okay. I went ahead and downloaded the DLL file and the executable. I guess it did this one. But I'm not actually running this one. It's not a big deal. But I needed this one. So I downloaded those and I dropped them in my GNS folder. So Program Files, GNS. Obviously this is Windows. I threw them in my VPCS folder. So there's the executable, but it came with an older version anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. And then I went ahead and dropped the DLL file in there as well. I went ahead and threw some of the other image appliances in there as well, just so I knew where they were at. But once you get those, just hold on tight, and we'll talk about those in a second. Oracle VirtualBox. So it comes as a part of GNS3. I already had it installed, but it's basically going to allow you to run another operating system on top of your current operating system. So you may or may not want that. I like to play around with a couple different operating systems, so I already had it installed. Anyway, so once you get everything downloaded, go ahead and install GNS3. One of the things I found that works out better for GNS3 is I right-clicked the icon and made sure it ran as an administrator when I fire it up, which is why it gives me the little pop-up. Seems to run a little bit better that way. Next thing you're going to want to do is actually name a project. So we'll do test project. You're going to want to head and check both of these boxes. If you don't check this top box, even though you save your topology, next time you come into it, your routers won't have a config because they didn't get saved there. So you're going to want to go ahead and do that. All right. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is to actually import your iOS images. You're going to go to Edit, iOS Images, and Hypervisors. Now I've already got a couple in here. The basic premise is that you're going to map to an image file. When you click on it, okay, it's going to say, hey, image is compressed. Would you like to uncompress it? And it's going to create an image file. The thing that it's doing is it's going to allow the router to boot a lot faster because it doesn't have to uncompress the images. If you've ever booted a real router, it takes a little while. I mean, those images are highly compressed. So once you do that, you're going to go ahead and import them, tell it what kind of a router it is, and usually it can figure that out based upon the iOS that you grabbed. You can set your RAM sizes. I typically leave them at default, but you can play around with them. Maybe some of your beefier routers are going to need a little bit more RAM. You're going to go ahead and save it. It's going to bring it up here to the top, and that's all you're going to do from this screen. Okay, now that we've got the iOS images set, the next thing we're going to want to do is set our idle PC values. So if you don't do this step, you are going to max out your processor. These guys can get quite resource heavy. So you're going to want to go ahead and grab one, drag it out, right click, hit start. Little light should turn green up here once it's booted up. Dynamips should fire up in the background. So the first one you fire up is a little bit slower. You're going to want to head connect to it console-wise. You'll see it kind of boot up. A lot of times they'll boot a little faster than this, but anyway. So now that it's booted up, I think I've already set the idle PC values, so my processor isn't running too bad. I think this is mostly video capture here. But anyway, you're going to want to go ahead and right-click, do idle PC. Now, since I've already said it, it's going to ask me if I want to calculate a new one. I'll go ahead and hit yes. What it's trying to figure out is what process is running that is really killing your resources. Like, notice now that I'm really maxing out here. So it's going to try to calculate what that process is and mark it for you. And in my case, it didn't work out. So I'm going to cancel. Notice I'm still running quite a bit heavy out here. I've had mixed luck with these. Sometimes you just have to keep trying it. Keep trying different values until you finally see that your processor drops down quite a bit. Alright, so let's see, did it do any better this time? Nope. So we're just going to pick one, apply, okay, and maybe I'll get lucky. Anyway, so hopefully you see your processor drop down. Again, I'm assuming this is video encoding and all that kind of garbage. So anyway, so once we've done that, it should store that value. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it and delete it. So the next thing I'm going to want to set up is a couple of my PCs, okay? Because I'm going to want to simulate some hosts, right? So I'll go to Edit, Symbol Manager. Computer is normally right here. So you're going to bring it up here. You're going to save it as a cloud. Apply, okay, all that jazz. Going to bring it out here. Configure. Click on the tab under this NIO UDP. So these are the ports that it's going to talk to in the background. So this is one of our virtual PCs, right? So we're going to go ahead and add it. Apply. Okay. So not a lot that we can do here. So the virtual PC actually runs, if I bring up my program file GNS3 virtual PCs. So that's where we dropped this virtual PC and DLL file. So I don't know if there's a better way. I'm sure there's got to be some way in there. What I've been doing is just coming down here. There's this virtual PCS start.command. You can kind of, I think I've got it opened up. Yeah, so all it does is looks for the DLL file that we talked about before and then fires up this VPCS file. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and fire it up. What we've got here is the virtual PC. And so what you can do, if I do a show, notice this is virtual PC S1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can run up to 9 of these bad boys. And each one is mapped differently. So this is port 3000, port 2000, port 30,001, 20,001. And these values, when you set these up, make sure that they match what you're setting in here. 30,000, 20,000. The next one will be 30,001, 20,001. Okay? Then once you've done that, where am I? Right there. Now you can go ahead and set IP addresses. So you're going to do IP and in that format. Yeah, it's a little weird, but so you set it up, and now you can ping and do a couple of other things like that. Now to switch in between your different virtual PCs, you just hit the number of the one that you want to bring up. So virtual PC 2. Now I could configure virtual PC 2 and switch back to 1. Okay? Pretty easy stuff. If you'll notice, we'll do a run command net stat dash A. Oh, come on. If I could type today. I think I say that in every one of my videos. Anyway, so those are the ports that it's listening for our virtual PCs. Okay? So once you quit over here, they go away. Okay, so it releases those resources. Bam. So that's the virtual PC. Now we've got this QEMU guest. You can go to edit, preferences. So QEMU under here, QEMU guest. What you would do is find that binary image that you downloaded. I saved mine in my GNS folder. So you go ahead and grab that image file, okay? Once you've done that, you can tell it how many NICs it has, RAM, stuff like that, and then save it. Okay, so now when you fire it up from now on, it's going to use that image file to boot. So drag it out here, drop it, start it. And what it's going to do is it's going to fire up Linux in the background. So you're going to have Linux running here that you can kind of use. And you would use it just like you would any other Linux box. You're going to set the IP address. You know, you've got a bunch of different services that you can provide and use. So yeah, it just takes a little bit to boot up. So we're going to go ahead and close that out. I'm going to stop that and get rid of it as well. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about here as far as the hosts are concerned is this VirtualBox guest. Because really the meat and potatoes of this thing is the routers. That's what we're here for. Anyway, so the VirtualBox guest. So you can go under Edit. You can go under Preferences, VirtualBox, VirtualBox guest. Refresh your VM list. Now, if you have installed an operating system under VirtualBox, it should show up under here, which mine does. So I've got Ubuntu on it, and I've got one of the Linux microcores on there. So for me, I selected Ubuntu, gave it a name Ubuntu, I think, told it how many NICs it has, and I think that's determined by what you did in VirtualBox, then just saved it. And if I go under VirtualBox Manager here, you'll see that I have Ubuntu installed and Linux microcore. And it's as easy as just going File, Import Appliance, and then you can browse. So for, I think it was for microcore, all I had to do was select one of the OVFs. And I'd have to remember, it's been a while since I put Ubuntu on here, but I know it's pretty easy. I think I went New, yeah, and then selected Linux, blah blah blah, and went from there. You know, pretty simple setup process. Anyway, so now that I've got VirtualBox mapped to it, now when I bring up one of my VirtualBox guests, it automatically brought my Ubuntu one out because that's the one I saved. And now if I hit start, what it's going to do is it's going to fire up VirtualBox, and it's going to actually boot Ubuntu. Now you're going to have to play around a little bit with the different NIC ports and which one's mapped in into here. Just like I said, there's going to be some tweaking, there's going to be some playing around, just like there was with the idle PC values. Once you get it figured out, it's not so bad. So I'm going to go ahead and close it. And that's it for hosts, at least that I care about so far. Anyway, so the real meat and potatoes again is the routers here. You're going to want to go ahead, drag out a couple routers, bam, bam, bam. Or something along the line, who really cares at this point. Ethernet switch. Now, there aren't too many options here for switching, okay? You're really here for routing. So if you want to study, CCNP switch or what have it, you're not really going to be doing it from GNS3. You're going to want the real thing. Because the switches that are in here are very limited. You're not doing any commands on it. You're just telling it, hey, this port is mapped to this VLAN, and it's an access port, or it's a .1Q trunk port, and I'm not even sure what that is. Okay? So it's pretty simple as far as that goes, but your routers are going to be full-featured routers based upon the iOS that you told it has. So what you're going to want to do is go ahead and you can right-click, do a configure, go to the slots, and you can determine what kind of things are in the slot. Okay, I've got a WIC 1T on this one. I've got a WIC 1T on this one. You know, those kinds of things. So now what we can do is go up here to our add a link. Now we can choose all these different settings. I typically go with manual because I like to know what port's being mapped to what port. Go fast ether 0 up here. We can go to our switch. Fast ether 0 here. Go to our switch. You can go to serial ports. You name it. You can do whatever lab you're looking to get out of it. Okay. Then once you've kind of got it set up, you can come over here and do a file save. What it's going to do is export your configs, and it should also be saving your topology. Okay, so I think we did project GNS or test project. You can save it as one of the topologies there, right? So we've saved the topology. So the next time we come back in, we can load that topology file back up, and we should have this. And because we checked both of those boxes in the beginning, we'll also have our configurations. Okay? Very important. Go ahead and start them. Go ahead and console into them. I think the only reason it's doing this is because my 2600 for some reason is still running the bin file and not the .image file. It never got uncompressed, so the router here has to uncompress it. So it takes a little bit longer. Some of the other ones that are running off images, they boot a whole lot faster. But anyway, once they come up, it's full on router pretty much at this point. You can do normal commands that you normally see, dependent upon which iOS you're running. So that's up to you. Now, obviously, there are some quirks. I've had Dynamips crash in the background a lot, and I'm told that's mostly due to an iOS issue. So if it crashes, all of a sudden, this thing's going to say, hey, can't talk to host, or a host is not responding, or refused connection, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully, you've saved recently. One of the things I recommend is save, and save often with GNS3. All right. Just because like I said, I've had it crash plenty of times, and if you haven't saved recently, you're just out of luck. And the only thing I've seen to recover from when GNS3 or when Dynamips crashes in the background is to just straight up reload your topology and go from there. Because I haven't found a way. I'm sure there's some way to go in the background to restart it back up, but for me, just going back and opening up that topology kind of fires everything back up, or closing out GNS and restarting over. But that's pretty much it. Bulky here is your getting these idle PC values set right so that you're not killing your processor. Getting your hosts set up so you can actually use them. And then you're really just limited to your own creativity. I know a lot of guys are mapping these to some of their outside or their computer ports so that they can actually pass traffic through their computer through the GNS network and back out. And they do some cool stuff with it. Me personally, again, I'm a fan of the real router, but hey, to each his own. Anyway, so hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got something out of it. Hope I didn't screw it up too much. And thanks for watching.